In this episode, we discuss the best ways to work out. Welcome to the Neat Athlete Podcast, a podcast discussing healthy habits, lifestyle design, and all the controversial fitness thoughts we have. Let's do this.
Ta-da. Hello again.
What's up, Mike?
Hello, peoples. Hello, Josh.
How are we
Thank you for
doing?
listening. Goodbye. That's it.
What are we listening to today?
I don't know.
The
It's
magic.
an early morning. It's an early morning podcast. So Josh said that we should tell people, and I think we should. It's an early morning podcast today.
And why is it an early morning podcast for you? What were you doing this morning that makes it super early?
I was putting the baby back to sleep for the second time today.
Okay.
Well, no, not the second time today. It felt like the second time, but time's kind of like a mind warp a little bit when you're waking up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So I think I had a dream that I was putting him to sleep at one point, honestly. And then
While you were awake or while you were sleeping?
While I was sleeping, I had a dream that I was putting him to sleep, but it was different. It was like I was putting him to sleep in the bedroom. Whereas in the morning when I wake up, I usually like give him a bottle, change his diaper, and then put him back to sleep.
Okay.
That's how it goes. Yeah. But today,
You got your routine though. That's good.
yeah, exactly. The fact that there's a routine right now with 5-month-old makes it feel manageable and realistic that I'm actually a responsible adult, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm the opposite. My kids are, luckily, knock on wood, are sleeping right now through the night and everything. But I chose to stay up late last night and play Halo with my wife, which is something that we used to do before kids. And so sometimes you have to make those choices to stay a little late and be tired in the morning because it's awesome to do with your partner.
Yes. When's the last time you played Halo?
We've kind of been getting into it the past month or so because a new Halo came out like 6 months ago or 5 months ago. And
oh yeah, that's right.
And we just found out you can do online it's free. You don't have to be part of Xbox Live anymore or anything like that.
They just opened it up.
They just opened it up for free, and so we've been playing again like at night when we get the kids down. It's a good release for us. It really is.
Yeah.
So
I got back into Diablo because they released the mobile version of Diablo.
Okay.
Diablo Immortal, and it's like my in between clients like 15-minute break thing. So I don't feel like I have to squeeze something in because a lot of times I try and like get something done in 15 minutes and like change my mindset, and it doesn't help. Yeah, just like chill out for 15 minutes basically a lot of those times.
Right. And health wise, that's a good choice because like you're using technology for a useful break and a purposeful break that you can kind of like change your mind, switch your attitude, and play a game that you probably used to love when you were young. So it does bring you joy. And they just released a study, like a super long study, that video games are good for kids now. Like like when we were young, it wasn't good for us or whatever.
Yeah.
But I played a ton of
sponsored by EA Sports.
Truth. Which is huge now, which is very, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I think they have their place. I don't think I think they're just a tool. And a lot of times when we get like a really innovative tool, there's always going to be a backlash, and if it's truly innovative, it'll kind of survive the backlash. It's kind of like the fires something has to go through, Yeah. Like, and weirdly enough, it's weird talking about video games like this, but I feel like video games kind of had to go through a fire, to get to the point where they're at now, which is like takeover point, basically.
I wonder if people see the writing on the wall. At least I see it as once AI, not necessarily AI, but once automated cars and more things that are automated get popular, then video games are going to be part of real life and part of work. So like I actually was looking at a job the other day that you can actually stay at your computer and you can drive a forklift in a warehouse from your computer just using a joystick, and like that's like a job now. And so playing video games, I think are going to be prerequisites for a lot of these types of jobs.
I think video games kind of paved the road for the technology revolution we're experiencing these days.
Okay.
I think like what do you call it? When you think of like an innovation curve, There's the early adopters at the beginning, like that make up like the 5% of
Yeah.
the initial customer base. You know,
Yeah.
you don't have those, you don't get the rest of it. You know, you just stay flat or dead,
You need
basically.
that like super growth, that 5% growth of like super users at the beginning.
Exactly. And like video games are the tech super users. Video gamers are the tech super users, basically.
I like it. I like it.
And then they get all the data. Like it's funny when I hear somebody who plays a lot of video games talk about like privacy
Yeah.
online, like really pissed off. Like, if they're not pissed off, it's a good conversation. But if they're like really pissed off about it, I'm like, how ignorant are you to the fact that your data has been like taken from you from the get-go, from like the minute you push like up, down, left, right, you know, and we're connected to the internet.
What kind of weird data do you think they can pull from Xbox? Like, do you think there's some kind of like behavior data from like using your thumbs or anything like weird like that?
No,
Or
how you react. So like good games have good stories, you know, and how you react to those stories and what's the formula for those stories and how do you get more people to interact with those stories and
yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I
and
love it.
the social reactions you get from adding the like you're playing God in a simulated fashion when you're developing a game for millions of users, I would say.
Right. Oh man, I wonder if there are video games that are created now like to like only to develop like to figure out certain behaviors or get certain data. And
I
I
don't even
bet
think they need to do it for that reason, dude. You just got to comb the data. You just
right.
got to be like, okay, when this, if this, then what?
Right.
You make your prediction and then you say, show me what happened. And then it shows you. Then you can ask your whatever algorithm to comb the data for blank, be blank.
Man, man.
Yeah. You know
So
what really freaked me out when I started to see I saw Fitbit get bought by Google
oh yeah, yeah,
because I was like, oh my goodness, the heart rate data. The heart rate, so like if you have heart rate and then you have time, for example, those two variables,
yeah.
like imagine what you can predict is happening in a person's life. And then you have location. What if you have heart rate, time, location?
Yeah, absolutely. Which they do. I mean, they have
I know.
yeah, they have all that data, but I think a lot of it is trying to get protected through HIPAA regulations
Mhm.
because of this very conversation. I mean, that's insane how much data they can
They're
have.
not going to keep up though. The
Yeah,
regulations will not keep up. Like, the regulations are like 10 years behind if they're keeping up.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be able to catch up. So
No.
it's going to be a crazy world. But you know, data is also exciting. Like yeah, I have a weird struggle with this myself. Like I've gone through phases where I get rid of social media completely, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I don't want any data. And then I realized that like my stuff doesn't work as good together when I'm not like giving up a lot of my information and, you know, clicking yes on a lot of everything. And so I've really been I've kind of swung back and realized, you know, like what does my data, you know, what does it really mean to me? Like, is it going to be valuable for like us as individuals? I mean, like in the future, in the sense where we can get money from like Google and Amazon and places like that, or like, are we going to have to protect our data from day one? As an individual, like as soon as you're born, kind of get everything safe and keep it valuable for yourself. Like how do you think that's going to go, or is just everyone going to give up their data because there's no we're already too far?
I think we need to give I think the data that we're giving up um is it's like the genie in the bottle. The genie like that genie's out of the bottle and it's been out of the bottle for a while. You
Yeah,
know, I wish maybe I wish it wasn't maybe because people who understand how to affect like crowd behavior can pull the triggers, you know, a little bit more easily than people who don't
yeah,
understand like crowd behavior. But the genie's kind of out of the bottle, and you just kind of hope that there's multiple players in the game at this point, you
right,
know, with different interests. You hope that there's a variety of interests who are playing that game
yeah.
at this point, you know, like
that
that's
that all
the
don't have
battlefield.
the number one value of making money.
Yeah, that aren't like super greedy, you know. Yeah, like yeah, and then you're getting into philosophical like whose values are the ones that you want pulling the levers, you know, of society.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But and then things that like but I do think you should be like very you should be very protective of like your individual privacy, and we should be constantly working towards keeping people doing malevolent things with your data, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
so like both-ish, but one of that the big one's out of the big genie is out of the bottle there. I mean, not that we shouldn't. I don't know. Do we even try and put it back in the bottle? The only time you could maybe put it back in the bottle is when you're upgrading like web, when we get to like whatever we call web 3.0, you know,
yeah.
like if we stop using screens and we start using VR headsets more, then you hope the VR headset people, aka Facebook.
I mean, yeah, I do think that it just comes down to individualized data, like you can determine what data you give up and what you can't.
Right.
And it would be cool if there's a way to, monetize it also for the end user, or if you don't have to monetize it, but at least give the end user like as much control and visibility as you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
that's pretty much with everything, even with fitness, right?
Yeah. I mean, the big thing is like you need to make sure that you feel secure, but you also need to have a healthy understanding of what reality is.
Sure.
So yeah, it'd be like I would say that's the I have the same mantra in fitness as I do with like my data, I guess. But like what's the reality? Like what's the whole situation?
Yeah.
And then what can I do? What's the serenity prayer, I guess.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So I guess when it comes to fitness, like, so our topic today, boom,
Mhm,
boom,
mhm.
boom, boom, is
Uh-huh.
the best way to work out.
Uh-huh.
Uh-oh.
I know. So yeah, and when you asked me about this earlier, I was like, what's the reason? Why would somebody ask this? Because I feel like we've heard this one way or another before.
Sure, sure. I've
And
heard it tons of times.
yeah, like I'm trying. I guess it's usually from people who are saying, like, who's the kind of person who says this, for example? Who typically says this? Like a beginner, typically. You like someone who asks this question, I'm assuming they're getting started or they're having a hard time maintaining a consistent routine.
Sure. I definitely agree with the beginner,
Mhm.
because like I've had beginner clients come up to me and say like, so everyone it's just a natural kind of human thing. Everyone wants to do the best thing, right?
Mhm.
Like you don't want to be like, hey, I'm going to do something a little bit worse than the best to so that I can get a best result. Like that just isn't that's the brain isn't wired like that. Like you want to do like kind of like what is going to be best for you. And then you go online and like a client would read an article that says something like the deadlift is the best exercise and you should do it every day or something like that.
Right.
um, and then they'll come and say like, why aren't we doing a deadlift? Or like, so that they're saying like what the best way to work out is, but like from different articles and whatnot like that. Like I see that
Yeah,
a
so
lot
they'll read something kind of like pop culture, pop fitness, basically.
which can be thousands of articles, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of times I feel like it's the things. As someone who used to read a lot of pop fitness, I would go to like the grocery store and magazine aisle,
Right, yeah.
and I'd look at the topics that were displayed on the front of the magazine, and then I'd be like, oh, that one relates to something I'm interested in right
Yeah, get
now.
get big arms.
Yeah, yeah. There was a time where I was obsessed with arms, just like a small period of time, and I feel like my arms grew the least when I was the most obsessed with them.
Probably, right?
Yeah, yeah. Weirdly enough, and it's a good lesson. Long story short.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly go into that someday.
Yes.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if it's something like that, or if it's somebody at a stage like that, what the best workout is for them, I mean, I would say is going to be the basics, but the basics related to like what's the factors then that go into um, a beginner's routine of having a really good workout. So it's almost like I want to go from like vague, which is the question, to like more specific.
yeah.
Like we're still going to start with a little bit more vague, which is like what's the factor. So I would say a large factor is like your current responsibilities in terms of like your ability to create time with your responsibilities. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
No, I was gonna say, explain that a little bit.
Okay, so what responsibilities do you have throughout a time period of a week that require you to be present?
Like
Like what
work.
kind of things, like work, parenting, maybe taking care of a loved one. What's like the responsibilities you have? I don't want to hear about like the fun stuff exactly, completely.
Would you put sleep under that category?
Yeah, if you're trying to be healthier, I would put that as a yeah. And so like I like saying responsibilities for that exact reason. So like what are your responsibilities? What are you responsible for? Are you responsible for your own health? I think you are, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So like what so like everybody's not doing the things that they need to do. So you're not going to be 100% on that.
Mhm.
But these are the things that are going to compete with your time the most,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah.
Um, unless usually you don't get a person in a personal training environment that is going to have a really hard time. I don't know, because they have a vice that's kind of taking over their life. But unless you got a vice taking over your life, if you can look at your responsibilities and kind of figure out how much time they take from you,
Yeah.
or for I don't want to say from you, but they require from you,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. Just the time commitment that you
Yeah.
have like every week or every day.
Right. So then you can kind of figure out, okay, when I say this, is there anything in there that would be more important to me than my workout?
Absolutely. Like taking care of a kid
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
yeah, anything like that, right?
There's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
Say it that way.
Yeah, well, it should be, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people when they make this first goal, they're like, I need to get into this workout. They put that as like their number one goal over like everything in their life.
That's
And
what they say at first. Yeah.
it's like an overstep.
Yes.
And then what you realize is that so many more things in life are more important than working out, but you fail, like you're like quote unquote failing like 1,000 times like
Mhm.
before you get to that point. And I think that those little, they're not failures, but those little like missteps or whatever along the way are what keep people from continuing.
They kill your confidence. They kill your
Sure,
confidence.
sure.
BJ Fogg, the Stanford behavior psychologist I always cite, talks about the the amount of people that a lot of times coaches are kind of helping self bludgeon, you know, versus helping take maybe tinier steps towards their goal. So some progress is better than no progress plus decreased confidence for future efforts.
Right, right. Yeah.
You know,
The future confidence is important for a lot of
right,
people.
right, right. So like you got to somehow flip that script. And how do you flip that script? But so you got to figure out like how do you fit in your new responsibility, or that you're trying to like push up the ladder of responsibilities.
Sure, sure.
And I think that's one way to start, I would say, to figure out what the best workout is for you. Because
Yeah.
that lets you know like one measurement, for example. And that's a little bit of like your time and your value and your priorities there. But then you need to know what's your abilities, right?
Your current abilities and even like your past abilities as
Mhm.
well
Your
are super.
history, your health history.
Your health history, absolutely, like that's all important.
These are like things we do with like initial client orientations,
Yeah,
basically,
like the
right?
park cues and assessments and everything,
Yeah.
which are super important. I mean, you have to get these down pretty good to make decisions to get these people started.
So I kind of want to break that down too. So why is health history? So like if you're someone who's listening to this and they're trying to make their own workout for themselves or get themselves into a workout routine, right?
Yeah.
And they listed out what their responsibilities are, and they figured out, let's say they have 20 to 40 minutes realistically a couple times a week, like 1 to 3 times a week is what
Yeah.
it looks like, right? 20 to
Yeah.
40 minutes, 1 to 3 times a week,
Yep. Yep.
basically, is like the max amount of time they can devote. Like how do you figure out what your abilities are, and what do you need to know about your health history without going super long? That's the problem, because like you got to go super long to figure out like what the best workout is for you, almost.
Yeah. But I mean, like, just let's just do like a quick overview, right? Like,
Mhm.
without going too deep into this. I mean, I would say you just need to see like where they have been, like the best they've been in the past,
Mhm.
And then I would ask them questions about that time period, like how are they working out? How was life different
Mhm.
then compared to how life is now? I
Right,
think
which
that,
talks which brings up those responsibilities a little bit more now. Yeah,
yep, yep.
versus then. Yep.
And because that could be a huge difference, because I think a lot of people, even if they did work out in the past, they're going to compare themselves to that experience, and that experience can be significantly different than their present experience. And I think and that can be a big ruiner for people, not a ruiner, but like a big step to get over at the beginning. Like, how many times have you trained somebody who was like, I used to play college football, and he like the dude, like I had a client who was in his mid 50s, a great guy, and he played college football, and that was his thing. He like wanted to do some of the same stuff, and so like the first few months were kind of like a struggle back and forth, from his ego and also to what I'm telling him, and like that kind of battle, until he finally realized that he was just like going to start listening to me, because it just affects you differently, and you can't do what you did 5 years ago. You can't do what you did 20 years ago. So
Sometimes you need to like experience basically how you feel before you assume how you feel, I guess, right? If you haven't been in a movement environment in a while.
like you can't even, like, you shouldn't even trick your mind into it. Like, you should just experience. I really like just experiencing things, because it, for me at least, it puts me in a position where like I absolutely know. Like, you can use theory and use books and smarts as much as you want, but like
Right.
until you do something and experience it for yourself, like for me at least, like that's the only way I know.
So like if you experience it, I think you could do a couple of basic movements, and everybody kind of agrees what basic movements are. For the most part, I think I shouldn't say everybody, but for the most part, the fitness industry is hip to what basic movement patterns look like. I would say like there's
Yeah.
usually like a push, a pull, a hinge, a squat, a carry, a crawl,
Yeah.
something of that nature. Like a traversing pattern.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um, you know, but some people talk about like the front of the body, the back of the body, the top and the bottom of the body.
True. True.
Using the muscles that way, but a whole body approach. So if you kind of hit your whole body, ideally, I'd like to hit your whole body in a way that you assume you're going to use your body.
Okay.
That makes sense,
No, absolutely. And
So
how would that differ between people?
some people have they have different demands on them than other people, because
Let's say there's a warehouse worker versus a computer programmer.
yes, exactly. So a warehouse worker is going to be on their feet a lot more.
Yeah.
They're going to be bending over a lot more. A computer programmer is going to be basically not having a lot of movement requirements. So it's almost like the less movement requirements you have, the more you have to get the basics checked.
Yeah.
And the more movement requirements you have, the more you kind of got to do maintenance on the basics, I would say.
Agree. I find a huge difference between those two people. I've kind of been both, myself. So like I have a little bit of experience in like sitting for 40 hours a week, and also like moving and sweating for 40 hours a week.
Right.
And some of the biggest differences that I notice is that when I'm doing warehouse type work, my workouts, I have to like really go to like maybe one full body workout a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest is mobility,
Yeah.
and like just correction. So smaller little workouts compared to when I was doing work where I was just sitting all day.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that it was better for me to work out like 3 to 5 times a week, like maybe like 20 to 40 minutes. Like I like that time period.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, like be more specific on like you're gonna have to do some more corrective work and whatnot. But those 3 to 5 workouts would be enough for me to get all that in.
Yeah, and like to get started, if you're trying to check on your whole body, and you're trying to get all of your body moving, and you're thinking about keeping things balanced, I would say, then you're going to be really close to what the best workout is for you, I would say. But I would say that something we kind of already talked about, that's going to change over time,
Yes.
you know, and that's normal. So don't you have to stay vigilant, basically. Don't get like too comfortable. I mean, I know people who've done the same workout for a long period of time, but even they would tell you that they modify that workout in multiple ways based on like the stages of their life.
Yeah.
So like I may have the same movements, but the way I do those movements and how often I do those movements, like we just said, like if you're so you go from a different one job that requires more movement out of you to another job that requires way less movement out of you. You'll have similar movements, but your amount of time you have to devote to movement changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that time thing is really is a big factor.
Right.
And I also like to find fun ways to split it up too. I mean, there's also important, like we need to think about it in the long term, like your whole life. Like that's how I tend to work out. But
Yeah.
I do also like to kind of split it up into seasons too.
Yep.
And like that for me changes a lot because, and I think it also, this does have to do with time and environmental factors, because like in the winter time, like for where we live, like the winter time, you're not going outside as much, or if you do, it's significantly colder, but it just in general your outside time kind of like goes down.
Hmm.
So I tend to, like in the winter time, have to train a little bit differently than like in the summertime, and that helps me focus, and it also changes it up. And so then you're like, and this is all ways that you have to think about working out, like, and with the seasonal workouts, add that on to what you were saying with life changes.
Hmm.
Like if all of a sudden now you have throw a new baby in there, you might have to not really do that much working out for a few months, maybe only focus on anything you can get, probably focusing on sleep is the most important thing, and some mobility, and you're not thinking about the season. So I guess you really are, there's a lot really that goes into it.
I think you're a big victim of your circumstance a lot of times, but you don't have to be a victim in terms of how you react to that environment, you
Well, you
know?
want to be in control of
Right.
your changing environment.
Right.
So it's going to happen, or at least you have done it so many times that you realize it's happening, and then as soon as you realize that change, then you purposefully change to that environment, because you don't want to just like it does stink, like there's a lot of talk, I've had philosophical talks about change of environment. Like, don't allow your environment to change what you're doing, like, because you kind
Mm.
of want to be. But in all honesty,
Your
I
brain
think
doesn't work that way though.
the best systems are when you change to your environment, and you change your system. For me, change your system around my environment, and your environment's always changing. So like it's like a constant process,
Like an update.
and I think it's important.
Yeah. I think if you want a system that feels like it's updated, and current and ready for, the change that always inevitably is going to happen. You have to kind of be ready to tweak it and change it. But there is a balance, I mean, for most people, that balance is probably 4 to 8 weeks, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of our programs with our clients are 4 to 8 weeks basically. And then if they're still having a hard time, like that program fitting in that 8 week time period, it's usually a sign that we need to drastically change some part of the format, you
Yeah.
know, and like the day you do it and all that stuff. Because I mean, 2 months time, it's kind of like when if you got an injury and it's been nagging you for over 2 weeks, and doesn't seem to be getting any better. That's like time to go into the doctor.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, like I really think that's why it's super important to talk to people about your fitness,
Mhm.
or like have a coach to kind of to guide you through this. Like, we're both coaches, so we're used to talking about this stuff like all the time.
Mhm.
But I have these conversations a lot with my wife, because it's not like her main focus, and so it's good to, you have to like remind your body and mind all the time of these things. and
Mhm.
and in my opinion, you have to be aware every day, and you have to be an iterator, and you have to kind of figure things out. So like, it's not like going to a gym and signing a 3-month workout contract, and expecting you're going to be 30 pounds less in 3 months. Like it's this, like, it's this deeper thing. I think that if you want to make a change for the rest of your life, and you want to figure it out, like in a busy schedule, like, and being tired all the time, like, because that's like real life stuff, like having vices, and still being able to be healthy at the same time, there's just so much that goes into it. and at the same time, it's just about being aware. It's like, not that, like, you don't have to be super smart, you just have to be aware of these things, and want to change to make your health good and your health the best. And it's just it's a good process. I'm glad I get to talk about it with you all the time.
Right. Yeah, we get to geek out about it basically. And I think like, yeah, as coaches, it's hard to notice, I guess, because we do talk to people about it as often, and it's not something that people, I guess, think about as much. But I mean, yeah, when people go into the gym and they want to make a change, like the changes they talk about are drastic changes, you know?
Yeah,
They're not like little tiny changes that they're talking about. They're talking about drastic changes. And drastic changes require like drastic measures, but those drastic measures are a lot less drastic feeling if you just kind of bite off as much as you can chew, digest it, and then repeat. You know,
exactly.
yeah,
Make
like
it simple.
Rome wasn't built in a day. So if you can get the basics down, if you can figure out what your responsibilities are, and then you can stay diligent with like updating that system. And I think a seasonal basis is pretty good. So to maybe if you're not living in a place where the seasons change as much, that'll mess with you a little bit more. I feel like when I lived in Arizona, I had like cabin fever a little bit because of like how little you get out at certain
Okay,
times of the year because it's so hot. You
sure.
don't really like get into nature as much in some environments. And if you're not getting into nature as much, you may not be aware that like the world is changing. I know
Yeah,
that sounds weird to say such an obvious thing, but we adapt seasonally just like athletes peak seasonally, if that makes sense. I feel like that's probably the easiest way to take like a pop reference because you're not going to get peak after peak after peak after peak after peak, you know?
yeah.
Um,
Like, you're not going to be ripped the whole year, every year for the rest of your life. Well,
yeah, and
probably not.
you're not gonna get stronger at everything all the time, every time, you know?
Yeah.
Like you're not gonna get better at everything all the time, every
Like, you might have one cycle in your reverse lunge where you're doing like 35-pound dumbbells and you feel super strong and you can do it like into a hold, and then then the next year, or like the next cycle, like 6 months later, maybe you might not be able to do as much, or less, or maybe you're a little bit wobbly or whatever.
Mhm.
So I mean, your body changes, and then you would have to think from there, like, how, so why am I wobbly and where should I train, like me. So that would be an iteration that I would make there, is like kind of figure out that and maybe change it to like a regression, probably, and then just kind of rebuild and then go back up. And these things
Mhm.
are just they can definitely change year in, year out, and from cycle to cycle.
Right, right. And if you can get really into like microcycles and macro cycles and periodization and a lot of that. And I do think that's useful, more so for athletes than the general public. I feel like if you just keep the idea that you're going to have periods where it's time to update the system, and you're going to have periods where you got to stay consistent, even if it doesn't feel like you're going in the right direction,
Yeah,
because uh, there's more going on than just muscle building. There's a lot more going on in muscle building when you get in like what hopes to be your best workout.
yeah.
Um,
Are you talking about like what, also talking about performance and
well, just
stability
the
and things
fact of
like that, or just how your body's working, or like?
I'm thinking more like you actually going to the place on a regular routine, you know, irregardless of what you do at that place. Gets your brain used to going to that place more often, and stop fumbling about when somebody asks you, "Hey, what are you doing on this day at this time?"
Yeah,
You know, you don't say, "Oh yeah," and you commit yourself to something, and then you remember that you actually usually you've been trying to commit to working out. Like when it comes back to the responsibilities, for example, like just the act of getting into the gym requires so many different little habits.
right.
You know?
Getting your shoes on, getting ready, getting in the car, going.
Right.
Yeah,
being
driving there.
not letting other responsibilities take over, compete for it, you know,
Shower at the end. I mean,
shower at the end. Yep. Letting
for
people know where you are. If you got kids, you got to bring them to daycare.
what's a funny thing that I found is the amount you sweat.
Yeah.
If you have a client or like a friend or whatever who doesn't sweat that much, they don't
Mhm.
have to like do that shower at the end
Yeah.
or anything like so that could change like a 30-minute workout to an hour workout or like
Yeah.
whatever that time slot is, and that time can stop people from going to the
Or,
gym or
or,
whatever.
or like if somebody, or if like that's when the bikers come to the gym, so all the lockers or the showers are taken up.
Oh yeah, right.
Weird shit like that.
Yeah, can
You
throw a
know,
wrench in any plan or anything
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
yeah. So like things like that happen on the regular.
Yeah.
If you got a home gym and you're just trying to go down to the basement, but you can't get away from the kids or something like that.
Very true. Very true.
So you have to go through all of those hoops a lot of time to get into a routine, which is why I like building like what you do a lot of times, like building a workout into kind of your lifestyle as much as possible. So I think that's the most bulletproof way to actually like be consistent with a movement routine and like keep your skeleton healthy, you know?
I think so. Like just to have a really good baseline of general health, I
Mhm.
think that's a good at least like baseline for you to do is just add exercises into your life and
Yeah.
just learn what really exactly what you need as a person. And then just put that in. And so this is like if I'm like concluding all what we've been saying today, like
Yeah.
the best way for you to work out or for me to work out that I found for long-term general health is yes to just like say if I wake up and I literally the first thing I do is I let the dog out and I try and take 20 golf swings like every day, and like that little thing makes me so much looser than if I didn't do that and it only takes 2 minutes.
Right.
But just take that as an example and add push-ups and pull-ups and bench press and all this kind of stuff back here that I can just jump on for like 30 seconds to 5 minutes or 10 minutes throughout the day, in my opinion, has been the best way for me to keep a base health line. Not be ripped or anything like that, but just be pretty healthy and feel good. And that's in my opinion, that's what health is for me.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
what about you, man? Conclude it. Like, what is the best way to work out for you?
The best way to work out. I mean, honestly, I think the best way to work out for me is to get outside, and to do things that challenge me. And then I like to keep a lot of workout reminders around in the house, kind of like you do. So I got the pull up bar over the doorway, and I've got a couple of movements that I kind of check in with on the regular. And then every once in a while, I'll have like a more strict plan, and I'll
Yeah.
go through that plan for like 4 to 6 weeks, and
Yeah.
then I'll basically try and like translate that plan into the wild, aka the outdoors and slash the things I have to do, the physical tasks I have to do because I have a lot of physical tasks,
Yeah. Okay.
especially with the two kids right now. So
That's good.
yeah, so doing the basics because I have them kind of peppered around to remind me, and then every once in a while I'll toss in like a strict program and kind of test myself with that.
I love that pull-up bar hack, like more than anything. Like I would recommend that for anybody.
Yeah,
Like, because if you just knock out a couple like if you can't do a pull-up, then stick a pull-up bar like under like in a doorway that you go through a lot, and just
yeah,
try and do one pull-up or a half pull-up until you
right,
can do one pull-up
yeah.
until you can do it. And
That's how I got my first pull-up in my 20s because
that's the
I
best
was
way.
a fat kid who could never do pull-ups. And I'm just like,
So,
I'm going to do pull-ups, damn it. I know I can. I know I can.
we have a very similar story, man, because I was always the big guy too. And I remember being like super overweight when I was in like 8th grade, not being able to do any pull-ups. And then we stuck a pull-up bar like in my brother's room. And then
Mhm.
every day I would pass the pull-up bar and do a couple pull-ups. And I was like 8th grade, overweight, and but could do like 4 pull-ups. I was like,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Damn it. Yeah, yeah. I taught enough people, and I was just like, what am I doing? Why don't I just like get this in more often? And then
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that's what a lot of things are kind of magical like that once you figure out where you can fit them in, you know. So I feel like we should have a name for the type of workout that's less I don't know, like the planted workout or something like that. Like you plant little seeds of equipment around you.
That's it. Just call it the magical fitness workout.
Magical fitness workout is the best workout. That's our best workout. The one that
Awesome,
you
man.
see often.
Is that a wrap?
I think so.
And that was the episode. Thanks for listening to The Best Ways to Work Out.
I know. I love how it's a contradiction. Yes. It's
Right. We are super proficient in non-exercise activity. So basically, we're awesome at doing nothing.
Yes. Amazing.